Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of HOI4, The New Order. And the votes have spoken. Today we'll be playing as Yockey's America, and we'll witness America's slow descent into extremism, and at last, Nazism. In the year 1962, Richard Nixon is the President of the United States of America. A new crisis is brewing in enemy-controlled Hawaii. Racism runs rampant across the South as African Americans plead for the Civil Rights Act to be signed, while many white Southerners fiercely oppose the act. The Cold War between us, Germany, and the Empire of Japan is starting to heat up once again, and it is President Nixon's job to bring his country to its rightful place on the world stage. Freedom. So, after booting up the game here, the first thing we're going to do is to go to our focus tree and do cracking the steel curtain and basically weaken the Germans for a little bit. And now we get the 1962 Senate election. So basically, America is split between two main parties. The first party is the Republican Democrat Party, which currently controls the Senate by a large margin, and the second party is the National Progressive Party. The Republican Democrat Party is split between, obviously, the Republican Party and the Democrat Party, while the National Progressive Party is split between center, led by Jackson, and the far right, which is led by George Wallace. For the 1964 elections, we want to elect George Wallace into power, and therefore we're going to choose Fighting for You and Me, help elect the MPP. Oh, and here we have protests in Birmingham, counter-protests in Birmingham, which leads to Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech and a house divided. And now the civil rights issue has reached to a point where we have to make a decision between passing the Civil Rights Act or vetoing the Civil Rights Act. Now, what we're actually going to do is do neither and let the civil rights issue deteriorate and escalate to a point where we have to make a decision. And now we get the start of the Guyana crisis. The National Assembly of Guyana would soon finish voting on the National Security Act. And the recent passing of the National Security Act has allowed the Guyanese government to seize hundreds of critics and political agitators. Sanctions are enough to pacify Birmingham and get the press to calm down. Bad news, Dick. We're not done with Birmingham yet. Haldeman flings the paper down on the president's desk, turning it around such that Nixon could read the headline, Nixon supporting Guyanese segregation. Call a meeting. And how democracy dies. One conclusion was reached. This shall not stand. Not on our watch. And we have declared war on Guyana, and the Guyanan War has begun. Oh, and the 1962 Senate elections are out. And as you can see, currently the Republican Democrat Party still controls the Senate, but the MPP has gained a significant number of seats. And oh no, it seems like our troops are losing in Guyana. And it seems like our military embarrassment in Guyana has led to here, Guyana and Goliath. The Guyanan War, as it now being called, lasted just over 5 months and became exceptionally unpopular once American forces stalled after initial success. Just another nail in the coffin for the Nixon administration. And the people are starting to not trust the Republican Democrat Party anymore. And finally, we get a torrent of blood. And now everything has come to a head in Birmingham. As yet another anti-segregationist protest made its way through the city center, explosions raked the already contentious demonstration, engulfing protester and counter-protester alike in a blaze of shock and debris. Initial reports placed the casualties at 89 killed and several hundred more wounded. The situation on the ground has continued to deteriorate, and both sides of the civil rights issue have quickly rallied around Bloody Wednesday, each side blaming the other. Oh my god. The Kennedy Civil Rights Act. I will gladly sign this bill, Mr. Speaker. The Civil Rights Act of 1962 passes, but not all was well in the South. Immediately, Southern voters flocked to the storm Vermont's far-right MPPs in the hope that the bill would be reversed. Not only did the bill grant much-needed reform, but it also caused division in the US, not seen since the Civil War. And as you can see from passing the Civil Rights Act, that pisses off a lot of the far-right members of the Republican Democrat Party, and now the MPP far-right is the dominant party in America. Oh, and here we actually successfully cooled the right commissariat to Madagascar. So they are now the Madagascar government and they're in the OFN. Oh, and some news are leaking about Nixon's questionable campaign methods. I will cooperate and in fact welcome this sort of investigations. Dick, the files got out. You don't mean the blackmail files, do you? I thought you had them locked away. As lie, Dick, but that doesn't change what's on the front page of Post. Oh, and Hitler is dead, which means everything will start blowing up, which means the South African War begins. Smash the dominoes. The time has come for the grandest battle against fascism since the Second World War. The last stand against autocracy abroad and worldwide. Goodbye, my dearling. Hello, Kuruman. So basically our strategy with South Africa is to get public discontent of the war to the absolute highest, aka apocalyptic. And this way we can drive society to the extreme and drive them towards extreme ideologies. And the presidential election season as well as the Class 1 Senate election season has begun. And the Department of Justice begins investigations on Nixon. The situation on Capitol Hill is, to put it bluntly, sir, gloomy. When the articles of impeachment are read before the House, there's no question as to which way the vote will go. As for the Senate, in the Senate you'll need what, 34 votes to acquit? You'll probably get 12, maybe 15 if you're lucky. Richard Nixon stared at the faces surrounding him in the East Room. He gave a wave and threw up 2 feet for victory signs, chuckling at the fervent applause he got from the crowd. He then turned around and stepped onto the Marine One and into history. And now, Richard Nixon resigns, and Kennedy is our president. And right after JFK came into power, Hard Hat Riot breaks out in New York. The whole debacle began when a group of college students decided to hold a demonstration in New York. Enough was enough, they said. America must leave South Africa immediately. A cause for celebration. Come on, Jack. I suppose we can just enjoy this meal before your big tour. You've earned it. I know you'll do great, Jack. I'll see you when you get back from Dallas. And I just feel like that trip to Dallas may not be so good for JFK. And John F. Kennedy assassinated. If not us, then who? And now our president is John W. McCormack, and I'm going to try to save Nixon's legacy as him. John McCormack never wanted this. Sealing himself, the caretaker president prepared for the ordeal ahead. And now we get to choose who gets elected in the primaries for the Republican Democrat Party. And since Wallace Bennett here is actually less popular, I think I'm going to choose him since we want the NPP to win. NPP election primaries. Wallace has great support in the southern states and pockets of support in the conservative enclaves who despise the increasing power of the government in their lives. Will Wallace finally get the NPP into the White House? Over 500,000 people have marched on Washington to protest the violence and brutality of the South African War, denouncing deaths of young American men and calling for peace on the troubled continent. All we are saying is give peace a chance. All the windows of the White House are closed shut now, for barricaded would be more correct. All across the states, things are quickly getting out of hand. Extremism is spreading throughout the country like wildfire. Demagogues and radicals spreading their lies and ideologies to everyone desperate or angry enough to listen to them. Why aren't we winning? Why? Now the public discontent with the war is very high. And we get our first presidential debate between Bennett and Wallace. Wallace's strong stance has convinced the voters. End this war now. Away with the president. Traitors, murderers, monsters, silence. What are you fucking doing? We are trying to push forward. Trying. You're trying. We're the United States of America. We don't fucking try. We win. I sent an army against a corpse. The Germans have nothing. How could you lose? Do something, damn it. Do fucking something. Oh, and the presidential election and the Class 1 Senate elections are out. For the presidential election, the winner is George C. Wallace. And for the 1964 Senate election, the National Progressive Party has successfully taken the majority of the seats out of the frying pan. The voices screamed outside the White House when he was eating, when he was sleeping, when he was working, never ceasing, never stopping, always louder, louder, louder. Make them stop. I don't want to hear them. Make them stop. Make them stop. The public discontent with the war is extremely high. And the Jim Crow takes flight. Let's shake things up around here. and George Wallace inaugurated as the President of the United States. Years of progress, soon to be undone. So basically, our job as Wallace is to go full gamer mode and to implement the most segregationist and racist policies so that we can get impeached later down the line. I'll go over why we want that to happen, but for now, we need to go down the Yankee school rant and end the Civil Rights Act, and at last we'll go full gamer here with universal segregation. But first, we'll start with the Wallace presidency. Into the fire. When George Wallace traveled to the Senate to ask, plead, even beg for another extension of the war measures, he had prepared for a fiery welcome, but when he stepped for the first time in the month outside of the White House, he realized he couldn't have prepared for what he saw. This is the end. And now, public discontent with the war is apocalyptic. And as you can see, that boosted MPPL and MPP Yockey by a large amount. So now Yockey has 10% party popularity, while Hall has also 10% party popularity. The first thing we're going to do as Wallace is to put an end to this, since we're at the maximum public discontent with the war. So now we have to win the South African War. Into the open. The streets of Birmingham echo once more with the cries of unrest. Their placards bear slogans of hatred, pictures of Yockey and even Hitler, and calls for liberal and progressive politicians to be lynched. In the conference room in Washington, the Yockeyites meet. Their fundraising efforts have yielded more fruit than ever before. And now we can do the dirty state of schooling and look into reforming the education system. What did you learn in school today, dear little boy of mine? What did you learn in school today, dear little boy of mine? I learned that Washington never told a lie. I learned that soldiers seldom die. I learned that everybody's free. And that's what the teacher said to me. And that's what I learned in school today. That's what I learned in school. And now we have the National Educational Curriculum Reform Act to basically make our students a little more patriotic. You know, I don't see how anyone could dislike this. We're going to be teaching the youngster about the strength of our country. Ignore that our economic base will start to slowly worsen. The Yankee school rank. They seek to call me a tyrant for my recent battles. For what exactly? Wanting to keep the blacks out of your schools like you want and maintain order? So, with all that said, how do we fix this? Get mad, get pissed, get fucking enraged. Go out and tell your leaders you don't want this. Segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. And now that we're done with the Yankee school path, we can go down. This is a union, not an empire, and go down here to end the Civil Rights Act. And as you can see here, we are wrapping up our war in South Africa, and we have finally won in South Africa, but at the cost of extremism rising in our country. And now that we're done with South Africa, the next thing we need to try to expand to is Italy. And we have to try to tip Italy to our side of the influence to get them to join the OFN. And now we once again have the 1966 Senate election, and I'm going to choose fighting for you and me, help elect the MPP. And now that I've finished restore states militia, I'm going to go down segregation belongs to the states, support civil rights counter-protests, stop whining, and then end the Civil Rights Act. Oh hey, and the Indonesian war is won. Nice. And Italy also joins the OFN. The free world has just gotten bigger. Oh, and the Class 2 Senate elections are out. And here is the 1966 Senate election results, where we see far-right MPP gain even more seats than they did before. And now that we've finished the end of the Civil Rights Act, we unlock a new branch of our focus tree. Time to save America. And now we can finally repeal the Civil Rights Act. President George C. Wallace approved the American National Traditions Restoration Act, also called ANTRA, a repeal law against the Civil Rights Act, nullifying its legal effects within the United States. I want the name of Wallace flying across the country. And now that we've successfully ended the Civil Rights Act, we're going to go through enforce segregation through legislation and just go full gamer with universal segregation. Oh, and our American Education Separation Act actually failed in the Congress and was sent to detention. Failing to enforce segregation nationwide, George Wallace voter base will turn to Francis Parker Yockey. And yeah, that gave some boost to Yockey. And yeah, because Africa has become too much of a mess for me to deal with, I just gave them independence now. And the presidential election season and the Class 3 Senate election has begun. And actually, in the 1968 election, we want to elect Barry Goldwater into power. For this time, we're going to keep America strong and free and vote R&D. And our Kansas governor segregates his state. He's jumped the gun. This could cause problems. And black students defy governor, federalize the guards, and bring in the airborne. When the students of Little Rock Central High arrived at the school this morning, they found the National Guard already waiting for them. And the tragedy of Central High. The crowd froze as the shot rang out. The guardsman, his gun in hand, the activist bloodied and dying, falling to the ground, and then chaos. Oh God. And from multiple sources, the one word no president ever wants to hear are muttered on an hourly basis. Impeachment. This is terrible. This is the end of my presidency. I'm fucked. The coming days will be hard. Congress won't find anything. Calm down. The students testify. Kid said I never did it. The guardsmen testify. Still didn't hear my name in there. And now the House decides to forward the articles of impeachment. The official votes of guilt or innocence found in regards to President George Wallace have been collected for a final estimate. Guilty. We are lost, Lutheran. President Wallace has been impeached and removed from office, and our leader is LeMay. And actually, what we want to do as LeMay is to go down moderate routes, because basically what this will do is to spike Yockey popularity a lot, and Wallace's former voter base will lean on joining the Yockey. So as you can see, as I just said, these focuses are just spiking MPP Yockey as we go on, and now Yockey's popularity has grown from 12% to 21%. And the election day 1968 has come. President-elect Goldwater. The Conservative Revolution for Liberty. And now we enter the Goldwater presidency, and Barry Goldwater will be the last president until Yockey's final rise in power and the rise of fascism. There's a few things that we need to do as Goldwater, and the most important thing is to completely tank Republican-Democrats' unity and to make fascism and MPP reign dominant in the 1972 elections. And the first thing we're going to do here is to first clean up Wallace's mess and then sign the Civil Rights Act, which will make the MPP's fascist wing grow. To many Americans, George Wallace entered office with their highest hope. Yet in the midst of the nation's greatest crisis in decades, President of the United States of America, it seems, shall bear heavier weights than most. For the American people, he must. And the Civil Rights Act passes. Can we truly make America as good as it's promised? And the next thing we're going to go is down the Goldwater presidency path. America's gone through crisis and chaos for over 20 years now, but today, we begin to repair it. And now we get 3 branches that we can go down, and the first branch we're going to go down is the American nature. Time to clean up this mess. America, America, man sheds his waste on thee. And here, the Clean Water Act is rejected by Congress. And the Congress also rejects the Environmental Protection Agency. And now we're going to do America is no place for the radicals, which unlocks decisions to trample collectivism and fight fascism. And the thing about fighting fascism is that meeting the demands would give us bonus, but failing would make the Yockeys grow more popular. So we're going to take this decision, but we're going to do absolutely nothing to fight fascism. And next up, we're going to deal with the labor unions and complete the right side of the focus tree. One America, united. An American man walks through the rows of corn. The man's back suddenly goes rigid. The man withdraws the rifle, then grabs it steadily in his hands. The screen goes to black. Vote for the American National Vanguard. Who paid for such a horrible advertisement? And now we have some decisions to wage war against the unions. And our goal is to make our consequences as high as possible and then get busted by the public so that they'll lose trust in the government. Oh, and Iraq just exploded and the oil crisis has erupted. And we have to deal with the oil crisis now. The Class 1 1970 Senate elections are out. And as you can see, the Republican Democrat Party has unfortunately gained back the majority. Oil flows again freely from America's veins thanks to our oil rationing and price setting. We'll have to wait and see, but at least it seems the worst has been avoided. For now. Back to normal-ish. And now we can continue down dealing with the labor unions. And it looks like they found out. Do you know what Concret's already calling this? The second Watergate. Let fucking Nixon come again. Sir, it's not too late to salvage popular opinion. I'm not asking you for advice, Hoover. I'm asking you for some goddamn answers. All that work, gone in just one league. What a mess. And since we've been busted off what we were doing with the unions, we can't complete the right side of the focus tree anymore. And so now we're going to go to the middle path of the focus tree and revitalize the economy. And now we have the presidential election season and the Class 2 Senate election season. And this is the election that will eventually get Yockey elected. And we're going to go down the Reaganomics because that will make the National Progressive Party more unified. Mr. President, you have a choice. If you do what Reagan is suggesting, you can kiss the Republican Democrats goodbye. I trust Don. He has the best interests of America at heart. And here we've got the 1972 National Progressive Primaries. After a long day and night of voting, the chairperson is taking the stage to announce the results of the last ballot. Francis Parker Yockey, hail to the new chief. And the National Progressive March. But even the far-right MPP, notably segregationists and conservative, were standing up against Goldwater's proposals versus Yockey. America has spoken. America has heard the call to action. I promise you two things, dear friends. Either we claim the destiny we were promised, or we will die as heroes to our culture. Like a parasite, Yockey's words wormed into America's consciousness. And the Class 2 Senate elections, as well as the election day of 1972, has come. The MPP has failed to gain a majority, although Yockey has 20 Senate seats, while the far-right MPP also has 20 Senate seats. And for the election day of 1972, the Republican Democrat Party has 263 electoral votes, and the MPP has 271. By the difference of the 8 electoral votes, the closest election in American history, it soon becomes clear who will soon be sitting in the White House for the next 4 years. President-elect Yockey. The nation stands in shock. Riot police line the streets of Washington, D.C., and Francis Parker Yockey climbs the steps of the United States Capitol building to be sworn in as President of the United States. Those surrounding the podium are of less distinction than expected for an inauguration of such importance. The RODs have boycotted his swearing in. Much of his own party refuses to attend. As Yockey ascends, the din only grows into a storm of discontent. The president retracts his hand and begins to speak. It happened here. And as Yockey, we get 100 days of content, and we're going to start with this, the Yockey presidency. White House press briefing room, 9 o'clock. We will not tolerate anti-white activism when it interferes with the operation of military vessels. The White House, 5:26. You must continue our efforts to disseminate facts of the party propaganda that dominates and restrains the American mind organism. Next up, we're going to do a loyal cabinet. This is the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite. Firstly, Vice President spoke to the Senate declaring that today is a great day for Americans across the country. As we don the mantle of security for our statehood and autonomy against the threat of Zionists, the communists, and so many other dangerous actors lurking in the shadows. And finally, we saw Rear Admiral take a stand to the Senate today, as he said, Jews and liberals have shaken our structure to the core, and it's with hope that the President and I could work together to bring security to us all. Cronkite stared long and hard to a space unseen by the rolling cameras as a tear befell his cheek. The iron-willed reporter found his throat crushed, unable to speak any, but 8 more words. God bless the United States and good night, America. And we're going to do a subversive party. You're not seriously thinking about staying on, are you? He's already turning the bureau into his whole personal Gestapo. Hey, don't blame me. I voted for McMara. And now, end the overreach. I was told this is the landline for Commissioner Evan Winter's office. May I speak to him? Winters, the race traitor. Fella won't be bothering nobody no more, I'll give you that. It's all for a good cause. And now unleash the South. Regardless of what the legalities imposed on us by traitors demand, we shall no longer dictate to our sovereign brethren how they ought to enforce their laws. And now the levels of power, the bearers of the flame. Now, I know it's nerve-wracking and all, but we gotta do what we can for our country. The two looks forward, and none of the cherry election seasons of the past prepared them for the sight. Loudspeakers, sirens all blared out as lines were monitored. People were monitored. For God's sake, each vote was monitored. Not even votes are scared now. And finally, we can do the SAFE Act. Unfortunately, I don't quite have enough senators to pass the law. So we get the vexations of the vanguard, this brutal Bolshevik machination, this rebellion child sprung from the seeds of democracy, liberalism, and the Constitution itself. The Safeguarding America's Fundamental Exceptionalism Act is aborted, Vice President Byers. However, our future sole destiny is not quenched beneath the suffocation of virtue that liberalism exists as. The devil's horns deadlocked for now. And that is our Yockey playthrough. After 10 years of chaos, the American people has finally turned to National Socialism, and Yockey's tyranny has only just started. I really hope you enjoyed this Let's Play. It took me quite a long time to get. Thank you all for watching this video. Subscribe if you haven't yet. Like the video if you enjoyed it. And until next time, God bless America and Hail Yockey.